using spirituality as a if you're prejudiced, just say you're prejudiced. If you're a sexist, say you're a sexist. If you're a racist, say you're a racist. If you're homophobic, say you're homophobic. Stop using your spirituality. He shifts the power paradigm. He rejected oppressive structures. He advocated for a kingdom where the first shall be last and the last shall be first. Truth of the matter is, we don't want to be like Pilate, but we really are. The truth of the matter is, we want to stand up for justice, but we get scared. The truth of the matter is that we want to let Jesus go free, but we are worried about political expediency. We're worried about being put out. We're worried about being talked about. We're worried about being ostracized. Pilate reminds us that ergument day, we are called to answer the question, what will you do with Jesus? Because there are lots of folk who claim to follow Jesus, but their ideals and their ideology and their practices and their conduct and behavior are antithetical to the Jesus who was tried before Pilate. The Jesus who stood before Pilate spoke truth to power. The Jesus who stood before Pilate confronted religious leaders and Roman leaders. The Jesus who stood before Pilate was not silent in the face of oppression. The Jesus who stood before Pilate preached good news to the captives and the recovering of sight to the blind and letting the oppressed go free and declaring the fear of God's favor. These were the building blocks of Jesus' politics. The Jesus who stood before Pilate treated everybody as equals. Dr. Aubrey Hendricks would say he treated the people's needs as holy, treating people with dignity and recognizing the dignity of every human being, healing the sick, casting out demons, forgiving sin, feeding the hungry, raising the dead. The Jesus who stood before Pilate identified with the disinherited and the disenfranchised and the marginalized and the people whose backs are against the wall. The Jesus who stood before Pilate, in the words of Dr. Lisa Thompson, privileged the existence of women, identified with the physical human experience, and suffered with the least of us. Pilate said, what then shall I do with Jesus?